Have you ever lost someone who seemed irreplicable? Have you ever felt the weight of time tearing apart bonds you once swore would last forever? And what if, after 15 years, life put that person back on your path? Without warning, without searching, just through the force of something greater. This is not just a coincidence. It's a real story, full of emotion, showing how vibration and the law of attraction can restore connections that time seemed to have erased. Marcus Johnson was 44 when this story began to take shape. Born into a humble family in Atlanta, he grew up surrounded by music, faith, and resilience. Black, tall, with a calm demeanor, he always carried in his eyes a mix of strength and nostalgia. He was a freelance graphic designer, a job that gave him freedom, but also sleepless nights and financial uncertainty. Life felt like a tightrope. On one side, the hope of achieving more; on the other, the harsh reality of responsibilities he had never anticipated. Despite everything, Marcus always believed that something greater was guiding his steps. From a young age, he had heard his mother repeat, "Words have power, son. What you speak, you create. What you feel, you attract." At the time, it seemed just a lesson in faith. But over time, Marcus realized there was a deeper truth in those words. In recent years, he had been diving into books and lectures about the law of attraction. Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Esther Hicks, names that appeared like beacons in dark nights. Marcus experimented with small practices, writing affirmations in a notebook, visualizing himself landing better clients, repeating positive phrases in front of the mirror. And on several occasions, he noticed that something truly happened. Life's flow seemed to realign. But there was something he didn't yet know. The universe doesn't respond only to material requests. Above all, it responds to the purest vibrations of the heart. One quiet night, sitting on the balcony of his small apartment, gazing at the distant city lights, Marcus had an unexpected memory. The stifling summer heat made the air feel heavy, and the glass of iced tea beside him had already lost its freshness. His tired mind sought rest, but suddenly an image emerged clearly. Anthony Miller's smile. Anthony, his best childhood friend. They had grown up together, inseparable like brothers. They played basketball on neighborhood courts until the sun disappeared on the horizon, shared headphones with rap and R&B music, and made plans to conquer the world. Anthony was outgoing, always ready with a joke. Marcus was more introspective, but confident beside him. An unlikely duo, yet perfect. Until life separated them. Anthony moved with his family to another city during their final year of high school. Then came college, jobs, new cycles. They exchanged a few messages in the early years, but gradually distance won. 15 years passed. No calls, no reunion, nothing but memories. That night, however, when Marcus remembered Anthony, he felt something different. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was as if a silent flame had been reignited. A thought formed. Could I feel that connection again? Even if he never comes back, could I attract the energy of friendships like that into my life once more? That was the first step. Marcus didn't search for Anthony on social media. He didn't type his name into search engines. He didn't ask old acquaintances for contacts. Instead, he did something subtler. He began to feel. Every night before sleeping, he closed his eyes and remembered the conversations, the laughter, the sense of belonging that friendship had brought him. He visualized walking alongside Anthony again, listening to stories, playing basketball. And above all, he felt gratitude. Not gratitude for the reunion, which hadn't happened yet, but for the simple fact of having lived something so genuine. This pure feeling, without anxiety or pressure, elevated his vibration in a way Marcus didn't immediately notice, but the universe did. In the following days, small signs began to appear. Marcus noticed that old songs he used to listen to with Anthony randomly appeared in playlists. One afternoon, while passing by the old neighborhood basketball court where he had grown up, he felt such a strong shiver that he had to stop for a few seconds.
He began dreaming about the past. Moments he hadn't remembered for years resurfaced in vivid detail. All of this could have seemed like mere coincidence, but Marcus, who had already studied the law of attraction, knew the universe rarely speaks directly. It whispers through signs, through subtleties. And every day, his heart opened more to the idea that maybe, somehow, something was moving. During this period, Marcus began practicing a simple but powerful exercise. Every morning, before opening his computer to work, he wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. Often, he included memories of his friendship with Anthony. I am grateful for the childhood laughter. I am grateful for the deep conversations. I am grateful for having lived a true friendship. These phrases seemed small, but they had a profound impact. They reinforced the vibration of the connection, as if creating an invisible bridge. Months passed this way, and while strengthening this habit, Marcus began noticing subtle transformations in himself. He felt less anxious, more open to meeting new people, more confident in trusting the flow of life. He had no idea yet, but he was being prepared. Until, on an ordinary afternoon, the improbable happened. Marcus was in a cafe downtown Atlanta reviewing a project for a client. The place was crowded, the sound of conversations mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. He was so focused that he almost didn't notice when someone entered, but something in the energy shifted. It was as if the environment had grown denser, more intense. Without understanding why, Marcus looked up. And there he was, Anthony Miller, 15 years later. Time had passed, but the essence remained. Anthony was older, of course, some white strands in his beard, a more mature air, but the smile was the same. That same light Marcus remembered shone the instant their eyes met. The shock was so intense that Marcus needed a few seconds to believe it was real. His heart raced, his hands trembled, and for a moment he felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. It was as if the universe had pressed play on a tape that had been paused 15 years ago. Anthony recognized him almost immediately. His eyes widened, followed by an incredulous smile. He walked to the table without hesitation, as if no time had passed. "Marcus, man, is that really you?" The voice unleashed an avalanche of memories. Marcus stood slowly, still in shock, and before he could respond, they were already hugging. A strong, tight hug that carried all the years of distance and at the same time the proof that the connection had never died. In that moment, Marcus knew none of this was a coincidence.
The hug seemed endless. 15 years of silence, distance, and different paths compressed into seconds of raw emotion. The cafe around them continued its usual hustle, but for Marcus, the world had stopped. Only that moment existed, that impossible reunion that somehow felt inevitable. When they finally pulled away, Anthony looked at him with a wide smile and teary eyes. "Man, I can't believe this. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years, he said, laughing nervously, as if still testing reality. Marcus, trying to catch his breath, shook his head. "I can't believe it either. You're here, right in front of me, after all this time." There was a pause. They looked at each other in silence, absorbing the weight of the moment. Every line on their faces, every change in their bodies was proof of the time that had passed. But at the same time, there was a comforting sense that the essence hadn't changed. They sat at the table. Anthony ordered a coffee, but seemed more interested in looking at Marcus than anything else. "I almost didn't come here today," he confessed, leaning his arms on the table. "I was on my way somewhere else, but something told me to come in. A strange feeling, like I had to be here." Marcus felt a shiver. He knew how to recognize when the universe whispered through coincidences. It wasn't chance, it was alignment. "Funny you say that," he replied with a slight smile. Because in the past few months, I've been thinking a lot about you. Not in a way to search, but feeling, reliving our memories as if we had never lost contact. Anthony's eyes widened. You're kidding, right? Man, I thought about you a few times this year too, especially when I passed by the old court. It was like something pulled me back. The words resonated with Marcus as confirmation. Everything he had been practicing, the gratitude, the visualization, the feelings, had not been in vain. Somehow, mysteriously, he had attracted this reunion. As they talked, the barrier of time began to dissolve. Stories flowed, laughter returned naturally. It was as if two parallel worlds, once separated, finally collided again. Anthony shared his journey. After moving, he studied business, worked at different companies, married young, and a few years later, divorced. Now he was in a process of personal reconstruction, seeking to rediscover who he really was. Marcus, I realized I spent so much time trying to live the life others expected of me, but deep down, I was empty. His eyes darkened for a moment. It was only when I started seeking answers within myself that things began to change. Marcus recognized himself in those words. How many times had he felt that same emptiness? How many nights had he stared at the ceiling, wondering if life had something more in store? I understand, he replied sincerely. I went through that too. And it was in that process that I started studying the law of attraction. It gave me the strength to believe I could transform my life. Anthony tilted his head, curious. Law of attraction? I've heard of it, but I've never really explored it. Do you really believe it works? Marcus took a deep breath. It was the first time in years he spoke about it with someone who truly mattered. It's not about believing or not, he said firmly. It's about feeling. I didn't search for you, Anthony. I didn't try to find you. But every night I remembered us, our friendship, and felt grateful for having lived it. I felt that connection as if it still existed. And look, here we are. Anthony fell silent. His expression mixed surprise, reflection, and a spark of understanding. So you're saying that somehow you attracted this meeting? Marcus gave a slight smile. I'm not just saying it, I'm living it right now. The words hung between them, charged with an intensity hard to ignore. This wasn't just a conversation about destiny. It was the materialization of something they both felt but didn't know how to explain. Time flew. The cafe became the stage for hours of conversation, interrupted only by the clinking of cups. They reminisced about old stories, the time they barely avoided a scolding for playing basketball inside school, late nights listening to Tupac in Anthony's room, the naive dreams of conquering the world together. Each memory was a lost piece being put back into the puzzle of their lives. But something even deeper was happening. Marcus realized that as they spoke, a part of him was healing, a wound he didn't know he still carried. The pain of loss, disconnection, the forever that never came, was finding relief. Anthony seemed to feel the same. His eyes shone not just with joy, but with relief. As if this meeting were more than coincidence, it was a rescue. By the time they realized it, the cafe was nearly closing. They stood, and silence fell over them for a few seconds again. Marcus, Anthony said hesitantly, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like this reunion wasn't just luck. It was necessary, like I needed this now. Marcus smiled, with the serenity of someone who already knew the answer. Not everything needs to be explained. Sometimes we just need to feel. They walked out together through the illuminated streets of Atlanta. And as the city pulsed around them, Marcus was certain of one thing. The universe had answered a request she didn't even know she had made. Not a request in words, but in vibration. And this reunion was just the beginning. That night, when Marcus got home, It took him a long time to fall asleep. His body was tired, but his mind was racing. Every word spoken, every laugh shared, every look confirming that Anthony was there again felt impossible to digest. He laid down staring at the ceiling, breathing fast, and whispered quietly, "Thank you, universe. Thank you for this gift." And for the first time in a long time, Marcus slept in peace, his heart light. In the following days, life felt more vibrant. Simply waking up knowing he could see Anthony again filled his routine with new energy. It didn't take long for them to plan the next meeting, no longer by chance, but by choice. It was a Saturday morning when they met at the old neighborhood basketball court. The sun shone bright, the heat reflected off the asphalt, and the smell of freshly cut grass brought back memories of summers past. Marcus arrived first, dribbling an old ball he had purposely brought, as if calling back the echoes of childhood. When Anthony appeared, wearing that same open smile, Marcus felt as if time had truly bent to bring them together again. "Man, I can't believe you brought the ball," Anthony laughed, reaching for it. "Let's see if you still remember how to play." The improvised game didn't last long. Both were out of shape, laughing more than competing. But every shot carried nostalgia. They weren't just playing basketball. They were reclaiming fragments of who they had been and rebuilding who they could be together from now on. Sitting on the bleachers, sweaty and tired, they dived into deep conversations. Anthony spoke about his divorce, loneliness, the days he wondered if he had made the right choices. Marcus shared his work insecurities, sleepless nights, and constant fear of failure. And in that space of vulnerability, Marcus began opening his heart about the law of attraction. "Remember when we used to talk, back then, about conquering everything we dreamed of?" Marcus asked, looking at the blue sky. "Well, I discovered it wasn't just teenage talk. There's a real way to align our thoughts and feelings so things happen." Anthony looked at him, curious. "You mean that thing you mentioned at the cafe?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, the law of attraction. But it's not cheap magic, not just thinking positively and waiting. It's about truly vibrating, feeling gratitude, imagining as if it's already yours, and letting the universe handle the how. That's what brought me back to you." Anthony remained silent for a few seconds. The wind blew gently, carrying distant city sounds. He seemed to process every word. "So you believe that I'm here now because of this?" he asked, a mix of skepticism and fascination in his voice. Marcus smiled. "I don't believe. I know. I lived it." The phrase lingered in Anthony's mind, perhaps because deep down he also felt something greater was at play. In the following weeks, their meetings became frequent. Quick lunches, coffees, walks around the old neighborhood. Each conversation brought up past memories while simultaneously creating new ones. They rediscovered affinities they had never lost. Love for music, basketball, the joy of talking late into the night about life's mysteries. But now something was different. Marcus was more conscious, more spiritually open. And without noticing, he began guiding Anthony toward that same openness. One night, Marcus invited his friend to his apartment. He prepared a simple dinner, pasta with fresh tomato sauce, cheap wine, and then showed him his small bookshelf. "These changed my life," he said, running his fingers over the titles. "The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Feeling is the Secret. Ask and it is given." Each one taught me something about how the mind creates reality. Anthony flipped through one of the books, intrigued. "I always thought this was motivational talk, but after seeing you again like that, I can't help but wonder, what if there's something to it?" "It's just a matter of experimenting," Marcus replied, encouraging him. "You don't need to believe right away. Just try to feel." Anthony borrowed the book that night. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his practices. Visualizations, gratitude, affirmations. But now there was something new in his heart, the certainty that he was no longer alone. The reunion had revived not only a friendship, but also his trust in the power of the unseen. And the signs didn't stop. One morning, upon opening his email, Marcus found an unexpected proposal from an international client. It was the kind of job he had always dreamed of, with generous pay and the promise of new contacts. He didn't need to think twice to realize his vibration was expanding. When he told Anthony, he laughed incredulously. "Man, that's too much coincidence. First I show up, now this client? You're making me rethink a lot." Marcus just smiled. It's not coincidence, it's flow. Conversations about the law of attraction intensified. Anthony, initially skeptical, began practicing small exercises. One night, Marcus guided him through a simple visualization. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine a situation you want to experience, feeling it as if it's already real. "I want to feel complete again," Anthony murmured, eyes closed. "I want to attract people and experiences that remind me who I really am." Hearing those words, Marcus felt warmth in his chest. He knew the universe was already listening. Time went on, and their friendship blossomed with surprising strength. It was as if the years of distance had never existed. But for Marcus, there was an even deeper satisfaction, the confirmation that true vibration is never lost. One Sunday afternoon, while walking through the city, Anthony suddenly stopped. "You know what's crazy?" he said, looking at Marcus. "I think, somehow, we were always connected, even in these 15 years. Marcus smiled, eyes glistening. "We never really got lost, Anthony. We were just waiting for the universe to align the pieces." And in that instant, both felt that this was just the beginning of something much greater. Michael woke up that morning with a mix of restlessness and anticipation he couldn't quite put into words. The unexpected reunion with David still echoed inside him like an old song suddenly playing again on his favorite radio station. Every detail of the previous night came back in fragments. The knowing smile, the hug that seemed to cross 15 years, the stories left unfinished that now demanded continuation. It felt as if a door had opened, revealing a universe long forgotten, yet profoundly familiar. He got up, made his coffee, and for the first time in years didn't feel the need to turn on the TV or check social media. Something bigger was happening within him, something that demanded silence and presence. As he stirred his coffee slowly, gazing out at the pale morning sky, he wondered, was it just a coincidence, or did I truly attract this back into my life? The question wouldn't let him be. He remembered nights spent alone, asking the universe to reconnect with people who had marked his life. Not specifically David, but genuine friendships, true connections, those that don't fade with time. Somehow, perhaps, he had vibrated so strongly with that desire that the answer came exactly right, bringing back the childhood friend who symbolized it all. During the day, Michael couldn't fully focus on work. He was a project manager at a tech company in Chicago, but that morning, spreadsheets and meetings seemed trivial compared to the magnitude of what had happened. Several times, he caught himself smiling, recalling how David had shared his journey, the paths he took, the places he went, and the daily struggle to stay true to himself. Later, during lunch, Michael decided to write in his gratitude journal. It was a habit he had adopted in recent years, inspired by a personal development book about the importance of cultivating gratitude to attract even more good things. He took his favorite pen and wrote, "Today, I am grateful to the universe for reuniting me with my best friend. I am grateful for the hug that waited 15 years to happen. I am grateful for the confirmation that life listens, that our desires are not lost in the wind. I am ready to embrace everything this reunion has to teach me." The words flowed almost automatically, as if coming from a part of him that always knew this day would arrive. When he finished, he closed the journal carefully, placed his hand over the cover, and took a deep breath. He felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. In the days that followed, Michael and David began meeting frequently, sometimes for coffee,
sometimes walking through the neighborhood where they grew up. Each encounter felt like a portal to the past, but also a bridge to the future. They laughed, recalling childhood mischief, but also reflected maturely on mistakes, losses, and the lessons life had taught them. Michael noticed something curious. Since that reunion, other areas of his life seemed to gain clarity and flow. Problems that once kept him awake now resolved naturally. Difficult conversations at work went better than expected. Even his health seemed to respond. He slept better, woke up with more energy and vitality. He began to wonder if the reunion with David was just an isolated event or part of a larger movement by the universe. Perhaps by reconnecting with this lost connection, he had realigned something within himself, opening space for other blessings to manifest.
The reunion with David had opened a new window in Michael's life. But what he hadn't imagined was how wide that window would expand, letting in a light that illuminated areas of his existence that had previously been in shadow. In the following days, Michael noticed a change in himself. He woke up with more energy, not just physically, but emotionally as well. It was as if his heart was tuned to a new frequency, lighter and more vibrant. He had read about this before, that reconnecting with soul connections could activate an energy within us that reorganizes our entire life. But reading about it in a book was one thing, feeling it firsthand was an entirely different experience. That Saturday morning, David invited him to visit a new cafe that had just opened in downtown Chicago. It was a small place, but with a cozy atmosphere, rustic wooden tables, walls covered with black and white photographs, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that seemed to embrace every customer who entered. As soon as they sat down, Michael noticed something curious. "Have you noticed?" he said, looking around. "It feels like this place was made for deep conversations." David laughed. "Exactly what I thought when I first came in here." And so it was. They started talking about simple things, music, movies, funny memories. But soon the conversation grew more intimate, more profound. Michael opened up about his insecurities, the moments he had doubted his own worth, the nights he felt lost even when surrounded by people. David listened attentively, without judgment, just with that steady presence that made Michael feel safe enough to be vulnerable. "You know, it's curious," Michael said, stirring his coffee. "When I first started practicing the law of attraction, I always asked for material things, a new car, a promotion, trips. But deep down, what I really wanted was this, someone who would remind me of who I truly am." David was silent for a moment, reflecting. Then he replied, "Maybe that's why life waited 15 years. Because only now were you ready to attract this back." David's words resonated with Michael like a revelation. He understood that the law of attraction doesn't just work to fulfill external desires, but also, and perhaps mainly, to align our relationships, to bring back people and experiences that resonate with our growth. In the days that followed, other signs began to appear, small coincidences that didn't seem like coincidences at all. Michael would think of a song and it would play on the radio at that very moment. He wished for more free time and an important meeting would be canceled at the last minute. He felt like walking to a certain park, and there he would find an unexpected opportunity to talk to someone offering a new professional chance. These synchronicities made him smile. He knew he was vibrating on a new frequency. It was as if the universe had opened the floodgates and now flowed generously toward him. One evening, after having dinner with David again, Michael returned home and opened his gratitude journal. This time, the words didn't just come as a list, but as a letter to the universe. "Dear universe, I finally understand. It's not just about what I want, but about who I need to be for my desires to make sense. Thank you for bringing David back, not as a piece of the past, but as a reflection of my present. Thank you for every synchronicity, every sign, every detail that reminds me I have never been alone. I am ready to keep trusting. I am ready to expand." As he wrote this, he felt deeply moved. Tears ran down his face. but they were sweet tears of recognition and surrender. For the first time in years, he didn't just believe in the law of attraction, he lived it in every cell of his body. A few days later, Michael and David decided to revisit the old school where they had studied together. The building looked different, renovated, but the energy of the place still carried echoes of their childhood. Walking through the hallways, they remembered the games, the difficult exams, the teachers who had left a mark on their lives. At one point, they stopped in front of the old courtyard where they used to play basketball. "Remember how we spent hours here?" David said with a nostalgic smile. Michael nodded, but remained silent for a few moments. His eyes were fixed on the empty space, now quiet, but once the scene of so many dreams and laughter. He felt a wave of gratitude so intense that he had to close his eyes to hold back the emotion. When he opened them, he realized something new. This reunion wasn't just about reconnecting a friendship. It was about reclaiming parts of himself that had been trapped in the past. It was about healing memories, remembering who he had been, and integrating that into the man he had become. David, noticing his friend's deep silence, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, are you okay?" Michael took a deep breath. "I am, more than ever. I feel that we didn't just find each other again, we found parts of ourselves that had been asleep." David smiled and squeezed his shoulder. "I feel the same." That night, returning home, Michael understood that this process of reunion was also a process of reconciling with his own past. He was healing wounds he didn't even know he still carried, simply by being open to living the experience authentically. Gradually, this openness began to overflow into other areas of life. At work, Michael led his team with more empathy. At home, he felt lighter, more willing to take care of himself, more patient with himself. Even his relationship with his family grew tenderer. It was as if, by restoring that bond with David, he had also rediscovered his bond with life. One Sunday, during a peaceful walk along the shore of Lake Michigan, Michael stopped, looked at the horizon, and let the cold wind touch his face. There, amid the soft sound of the waves, he silently gave thanks for everything. And in that moment, a phrase arose in his mind with force. The law of attraction doesn't just bring what you ask for, it brings what you are. Michael then understood that the reunion with David was neither a coincidence nor an isolated gift. It was living proof that by aligning his emotions, thoughts, and energy with gratitude and clarity, he had become capable of attracting not just a friend, but an entire new chapter in his life. And this chapter, he knew, was only just beginning. The days passed, and Michael's reunion with David seemed to radiate energy far beyond the friendship itself. It was as if that hug, shared after 15 years, had triggered a series of invisible movements now reflecting in every aspect of Michael's life. He began to notice that he woke up with a different feeling. Before, many mornings felt heavy. The work routine, the demands, and the traffic seemed to drain his energy before the day even began. But now there was lightness. Michael rose with a warm heart, as if he had something to look forward to. This anticipation wasn't anxious, it was serene. It was the confidence that something good was always on its way. At the company, the changes were also noticeable. One day, during a meeting with the board, Michael gave a presentation on a new technology project. He had always been competent, but often felt a heavy weight of responsibility, as if every word was proof that he deserved to be there. This time, however, his speech came out naturally, firm, and full of conviction. There was no effort, only flow. And the result was immediate: compliments, renewed trust, and even the promise of a promotion. When he returned home that day, he sat on the sofa, took a deep breath, and smiled to himself. This is the law of attraction in motion, he thought. It wasn't just about reconnecting with a friend, but about realigning with his own essence. By vibrating gratitude and joy, he had opened space for professional opportunities to manifest as well. But perhaps the most surprising sign was yet to come.
On a Friday night, Michael and David decided to have dinner at an international cuisine restaurant downtown. The setting was sophisticated yet cozy, with warm lights and soft background music. While waiting for dessert, Michael noticed a woman sitting alone at the next table, reading a book with a blue cover. Something about the scene caught her attention, not just the woman's quiet beauty, but the serenity she radiated. It was as if she had a different aura, as if the space around her vibrated in harmony with something I already knew. He tried to look away, but couldn't. David noticed. "Go talk to her," he said, laughing. "You're practically hypnotized." Michael felt awkward. "It's not that. It's just that she seems familiar." David raised an eyebrow. "Familiar how?" Michael sighed. "Like I've already asked the universe to bring someone like her into my life." Courage came in waves. When the woman closed her book and looked to the side, their eyes met. Michael smiled, and she returned it. That was enough for an invisible bridge to form. A few minutes later, they were talking. Her name was Angela, a literature teacher with a passion for spirituality. When Michael mentioned the law of attraction, her eyes lit up. "You believe in that too?" Angela asked, leaning forward. Michael answered with an enthusiasm that even surprised himself. "I don't just believe, I'm living it right now." The conversation flowed as if they were old acquaintances. They spoke about books, personal experiences, dreams, and even moments of pain that somehow paved the way for something greater. Michael felt an immediate connection, as if Angela were another gift from the universe, confirming he was on the right path.
Michael's life was no longer the same. The reunion with David had been the first spark, but the fire that ignited from that point was illuminating far beyond his own journey. What began as a quiet, personal transformation was now becoming a source of inspiration for everyone who crossed his path. It was as if every word he spoke carried a new vibration. Colleagues, family members, and even strangers noticed something different in his presence. Michael had an energy that was contagious, a sparkle in his eyes that conveyed confidence, serenity, and hope. One Monday morning, he received an unexpected email. It was from someone who had attended his corporate talk. The message read, "Michael, your words changed the way I see life. I was about to give up on a dream I've carried for years, but after hearing your story, I decided to try once more. Thank you for reminding me that anything is possible." Reading it, Michael was deeply moved. He had never imagined that his personal experience could impact someone so significantly. A lump formed in his throat, and he had to sit down. He held his phone to his chest and silently gave thanks. Once again, the law of attraction showed him that nothing is by chance. His pains, his searches, and even his reunion with David were not only for himself, but also to be shared as seeds of transformation. The following weekend, Angela encouraged him to write his story as an article and publish it on a spirituality blog she followed. Michael hesitated at first, but decided to take on the challenge. He spent hours on the computer, describing each detail with sincerity. The longing for his friend, the years of silence, the practice of gratitude, the signs from the universe, the reunion, and all the synchronicities that followed. When he finished, he felt that he had placed a piece of his soul in the text. He published it and turned off the computer without expecting much. But within a few days, the article began to spread. Comments appeared, messages from people in different cities and even countries. "I went through the same thing and you gave me strength." "I cried reading your story. Thank you for sharing." "I didn't believe in the law of attraction, but now I'm going to try." Michael was impressed. He wasn't seeking fame, he only wanted to share something real. But he realized the power of a true story told from the heart was immense. Meanwhile, his friendship with David flourished in a mature, solid way. Together, they not only relived memories, but also created new chapters. Inspired by Michael, David also began practicing daily gratitude. One night, he showed his friend a simple notebook where he wrote down small victories and joyful moments. "You've changed the way I see things," David confessed. "Before, I only saw problems. Now I see signs." Michael smiled. "This is just the beginning. When you open yourself to this vibration, the universe begins to conspire in ways you can't even imagine." At the same time, his relationship with Angela deepened. More than a partner, she became a mirror, someone who helped him expand his consciousness even further. Angela encouraged him to meditate, to quiet his mind, to hear his intuition, to trust the invisible movements of life. With her, Michael discovered that love is also a form of manifestation, perhaps the most powerful of all. It was during this period that an unexpected opportunity arose, an invitation to give a lecture at a local university on purpose and personal fulfillment. Michael, who had never seen himself as a speaker, again felt butterflies in his stomach. But he remembered the night he had trusted himself on stage and decided to accept. In that packed auditorium, before young people seeking answers for the future, Michael told his story in the most human way possible. He did not speak as an expert, but as someone who had lived the transformation firsthand. He described the loneliness, the doubts, the nights when it seemed impossible to believe, until the day he reunited with his best friend after 15 years. As he narrated, he saw in the attentive faces of the audience the same sparkle he once carried when hearing inspiring stories. When he finished, a reverent silence filled the room, followed by applause that echoed like a collective embrace. In that moment, Michael understood something essential. His story was a channel. The universe had not only restored a friendship, but had also chosen him as a bridge for others to believe in the possibility of transforming their lives. After the lecture, a young woman approached him, eyes glistening. "I lost my best friend 10 years ago, and I always thought I'd never see her again. But now I feel hope. I'm going to start practicing gratitude. Thank you, truly." Michael held her hands and replied sincerely, "Never doubt the power of your vibration. The universe listens even to the whispers of the heart." Returning home that night, walking through the lit-up city, Michael felt warmth in his chest. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." There was no specific request, no expectation. It was pure gratitude for everything. Time went on, and Michael continued to receive invitations, messages, and signs. His circle of influence grew, but he remained true to what had transformed him, the simplicity of believing, of giving thanks, and of trusting. One Sunday, sitting with David and Angela in a park, he reflected aloud. "Do you see how all this started? It wasn't with a plan, it wasn't with effort. It was just a sincere desire to reconnect with a true connection." Angela smiled. "And that desire opened all the other doors." David added, "It shows that when we vibrate love, the universe responds on a grand scale." Michael closed his eyes for a moment, letting the soft wind touch his face. He then understood that the reunion with David had not been an isolated chapter, but the prologue of a new life, a life guided by synchronicities, genuine connections, and the silent power of the law of attraction. And deep down, he knew the best was yet to come. There was a night in Atlanta that seemed crafted especially to touch the hearts of Marcus and Anthony. The streets were calm, lit by lampposts casting a soft glow over the asphalt, still wet from the recent rain. Marcus walked home alone after another meeting with Anthony, still processing the surreal feeling that this friendship, one that time seemed to have buried, had returned with even greater force. It was as if the universe had shown him, step by step, that nothing is ever truly lost when the right vibration is cultivated. What had seemed impossible had become reality, and with every reunion, their connection grew stronger. They were no longer just two boys sharing afternoons of basketball.
They were two men shaped by challenges, lessons, and pain, yet carrying within them the same essence that had united them years ago. In his private thoughts, Marcus reflected, "I didn't search, I didn't force it, I simply changed my vibration. And when I changed, he came." That was it. Living proof that the law of attraction isn't just about acquiring material things, it's about aligning yourself with the energy of experiences, people, and connections that belong in your natural flow. Anthony also felt the impact of this reunion. In long conversations, often lasting until the early hours, he admitted that he had thought about Marcus many times over the years, but never knew how to find him again. It was as if something invisible had held his hand until the right moment. They wondered, what were the chances that, after 15 years, they would cross paths again so naturally? No digital searches, no intermediaries, just by chance or by vibrational destiny. Every detail, every circumstance seemed to prove that nothing was accidental. During this time, Marcus began sharing his practices with Anthony. Gratitude journals, silent visualizations. The nights he didn't just imagine the reunion, but the feeling of belonging and connection. Anthony listened with curiosity, sometimes skeptical, sometimes amazed. But the truth was, he didn't need explanations. He was living the proof. He himself was the result of Marcus's vibration. And they both knew this restored friendship was not just about them. It was about hope, about believing that true bonds don't break. They merely sleep, waiting for the right moment to be reborn. Over time, Marcus realized there were no coincidences in his story. The universe responds to those who open themselves to believe, to those who allow themselves to feel before they see. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson. The law of attraction doesn't promise magical shortcuts, but it opens paths when we vibrate in harmony with what we genuinely desire. The reunion with Anthony was a gift, but also a lesson. On the last night they met that season, before Anthony traveled for work, they sat in silence for a few minutes, looking at the city's horizon. There was no need for words. What they felt went beyond language. Marcus, with eyes brimming with tears, thought to himself, "If this isn't proof of the power of vibration, I don't know what is." Anthony smiled, as if he could hear his friend's thoughts, and whispered, "Seems like nothing is ever truly lost, brother." In that moment, Marcus understood that the cycle had been completed. And this is where Marcus and Anthony's story becomes an invitation.